Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community was lightweight B-class cars. All the cars had to weigh under £2,000. Off the line, and it was the classical Ferraris that were the quickest. I am driving the orange California. There is a 250 Testarossa and there are a couple more Californias as well. There was a big crash behind us, which we didn't really know much about as we come down towards the first hairpin. The Vauxhall managed to outbrake himself, which gave me a fairly easy pass along with Testarossa, and it wouldn't be long before the two Californias found their way past. Now we're going to have a little bit more of a look at this. There was a massive first lap incident, and what's that, BMW and a couple of Fair Lady Zs. The Fiat has a crash on its own accord. There's an Elan, has a rather laggy moment into a Twingo, and there are lots of cars that are broken. I think in the end 3 Datsuns were broken in this. It's very, very hard to see what's going on. This is the best angle I can get of it, and from the looks of it, it's just a laggy collision between the Datsun and the BMW. They don't actually touch, and the game doesn't actually show them touching, but it is in effect a tiny touch on the back of the BMW that then sends him spinning into the wall, collects a couple of the Datsuns. The Elan then has a huge lag into the side of the Twingo, which put them both on their side, and then there's another Datsun as well that managed to get itself caught up in all of that. There were a lot of broken cars by the sort of second or third corner. At the front, though, things had gone a lot smoother. I think there's about 5 of us at this point who had kind of got away, managed to avoid all of the carnage. 4 of which were the classic Ferraris, and there is a Vauxhall VX220 in there as well. The classic Ferraris were really the dominant force kind of this evening, which surprised me. I was expecting there to be an awful lot more Lotuses or I think we've been through this before, I think it's Lotuses. There was very few of them, which really surprised me. I was expecting a lot more. I don't think there was a single Lotus 11. There was an Elan in this race, which got lagged massively and ended up on its side. The Ferraris were really very, very dominant around here. I was leading in the California. There's 250 Testarossa in second, and third and fourth are some more 250 Californias. Surprising, because these aren't the leaderboard cars for this track. I mean, they're fast cars, but they aren't the leaderboard cars. That's all led by the Lotuses. Further back, and surprisingly not many people decided to pit, which confused me a little bit. I would have thought with a damaged engine the first thing you would have done is dive in the pits. However, these two Datsuns, these were the ones that were all at the centre of the first lap incident. They were racing away quite happily, both having varying levels of damage. It's very hard to tell how much damage cars have, because the replays are kind of slightly dodgy and the telemetry will say different levels of damage each time you look at it. It's incredibly tricky to kind of judge. Later into the race, the Vauxhall unfortunately got spun out by somebody and took a fair bit of engine damage, as we're now stuck in this rather large battle for what was sort of 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, around that sort of place. Everything went wrong though with another sort of lag spike. Not really sure what happens here. There's a Chevy Spark and it gets involved, and I don't really know. The Chevy Spark got kind of a laggy crash with the cars that were stuck on their side, and then that was kind of broken, and then everything else comes piling down, and some more lag occurs. Well done to the driver of the BMW for waiting as well. Yeah, this was a lag fest. It's a little bit of a shame. I think about sort of 90% of the crashes on here were caused by lag of some description. I mean, that first corner one, not really sure what happened there massively. It looked like a little touch, but that could have been assisted by lag as well, because they didn't really look like they were touching. Anyway, one of the Testarossas that wasn't having the best race was now trying to help the sort of stricken cars, and that is very close. That's ridiculously close. How none of those cars collected him, I don't know. And this is one of the real dangers with having a rescue vehicle. One of the reasons why we don't have one at the moment is because it's so dangerous trying to just recover cars. Admittedly, this track is a lot worse than most of them because it's pretty much just walled in. Testarossa is having a tough time getting the cars to roll over. Eventually the Twingo does, and now the Twingo's stuck in the middle of the road with very little power. Luckily, nobody is really coming through this section at the moment, so we can kind of get out of the way. As far as actual close racing goes, well, the only sort of battle on the track is the sort of for the podium between the 2nd, 3rd and 4th place Ferraris. I was gone at this point. My Ferrari was really very quick around this track. Also quite like this track as well, which it does help, and I got away with all the carnage at the start. So I kind of got a little bit lucky in this one as well. Yeah, this was the closest race of the lot between these Ferraris. As I said, the Ferraris were really the way to go. And where a lot of people went, it surprised me about the lack of Lotuses. The Californias were the quickest of the Ferraris as well. You can see the pink California's made his way to the front of this little train. The Testarossa is still just about trying to fight. However, here is one of the big problems with this race, is there became a rather large car park as people try to get up this hill. Again, this is the problem with having a rescue vehicle, is that when we do get the cars free, then if they're on their roof, they're going to be pretty badly damaged. And then trying to get them back to the pits, especially if they go kind of near the start of the lap, can create a lot of problems for the leaders. We managed, luckily we all got through there most of the time without any major collisions. I don't think anybody hit the stricken cars, I'm not sure of that one. There was a lot of damaged cars though. This is another race between two of the quite heavily damaged vehicles, the Fiat 500 and the Vauxhall. To be fair to everybody, I'm amazed there weren't more cars on their roof on this event. Admittedly, there were quite a lot of broken cars that weren't going very fast, but at this curb through here, which they're about to go around, I was expecting to see a number of cars on their roof around there. Nobody rolled it from that. The only actual roll was from the start, from a lag spike. So, yeah, I'm surprised at the lack of rolls with these cars. I was expecting a lot more. As you get towards the end of the race, there are a number of cars that were just sort of on their own, and the field had really rather spread out. I had long gone in first. There was a fairly good battle between second and fourth, and behind that it was a car dotted all over the place. Varying levels of damage and avoiding. This Porsche, for example, got spun in the first lap incidences. He got spun around at the hairpin, and then you kind of just end up in a random place, not really catching the car in front of you, not really being caught from behind because cars are broken. This was the last. The traffic jam is now in a slightly different place. This was the last of the cars, actually. I think this is about 6th place that didn't have any damage. Everything behind him was pretty heavily damaged. So yeah, only 6 cars managed to make this right. I mean, I think even this guy had a little bit of aero damage. There was a lot of broken bits of cars, and a lot of very expensive cars were quite heavily broken. Anyway, as we come on to the final lap, it was a very easy race for me. A fairly uneventful race, really. I overtook a car into the hairpin on the first lap as the Testarossa rolled down the hill because it doesn't have enough power to go anywhere. It was a very uneventful race for me. My California is very quick. This is quickly becoming one of my favourite B-class cars. It's ridiculously fast and can just about get around corners as well. And a little bit of a celebratory slide there as I go across the line. It was a good day or good race, I should say, for the classic Ferraris. This is the bright pink. California is going to come in second, as the Vauxhall had a very unfortunate race and ended up about to be lapped. The black California was in third, and the Testarossa couldn't quite make it onto the podium. But it was a 1-2-3 for the Californias, and with another classic Ferrari in fourth. So we move on to the next race. This is at Silverstone International. I think I've remembered the rendition of this track properly. I can never remember which the versions are which. I quite like this version of Silverstone. I think it's quite a good track. I don't like the National particularly, but the International one is a little bit better. This corner I was expecting there to be utter chaos on because it's quite a nasty corner. There wasn't as big a crash as I was expecting. There is a Fiat going rather sideways. Normally there are horrendous crashes on that corner, but everybody got through there relatively well. Now the main rival in this one is there was a California that started on pole. That's always a good advantage. There was also a very fast Lotus Elan. As I said, looked at the leaderboard cars for this thing, and it was primarily Elans and Elises. There's some more lag. Good fun that is. I got slightly sort of nudged out of the way. See, there's a slightly flying Stratos. Didn't quite go as wide as that Elise over there, but completely outbraked himself. Now, we're going to have a look at this first lap from a slightly different point of view. There's the crash between the Lancia and the Fiat. I think the Lancia just outbraked himself. There's sort of a I can't pronounce that word. I don't know how to... Constantina, that one. You know what I mean. Effect behind him, and Alpha got rather badly damaged. There's a yellow Alpha, there we go. The engine's not looking too healthy. It was a very busy lap, actually, for sort of few corners throughout the entire field. I love the paint job on this Mazda, by the way. It's the Cars one. The MX-5, though, just doesn't really have the straight line speed of the likes of the Stratos, which is going to kind of muscle his way through. Trying to go 3 wide there, that's pretty brave. Amazingly, the Datsun actually doing too badly, the Datsun 510 there. Again, very brave move to try up the inside through bridge. Well done to both of the drivers. You see, that's how you go through a corner too wide. You give each other plenty of space. See, nobody crashed and everybody got through there, so well done to you. For getting through it. That's a tricky place to overtake through bridge. It's not a normal kind of overtaking spot, that one. At the front, and it wasn't long before the Elan had caught up to the California. The Elan in this race was very, very quick. And not surprising, the Elans are pretty much the leaderboard cars in B class. It's pretty much, I think it's dominated by Elans and Elises. I was surprised the Californias weren't, because they were proving to be mighty, mighty fast. And while they are good in a straight line, they're not actually that bad through the corners. They're never going to match the Elan. Because that thing is just ridiculously good through the corners. I also presume that this one here has been very well tuned. Because it wasn't long before he was going to find a way past the California. Despite the Ferrari straight line speed, just can't do anything about the Elan in the corners. Having to go very defensive through here, and then you're going to end up running a little bit wide, and the Elan is going to take that. Look how diddy the Elan looks as well. I mean, the California is not a particularly big car, but look at the size difference compared to that. The Elan is tiny. If it gets touched by the thing, it's going to fly off the road, which is kind of a disadvantage to it. I can't imagine it's much fun driving that with bigger cars around. You've got to be constantly wary. Slightest touch and that thing's going to be off into the dirt. You can see me there in the background, sort of starting to catch this lead sort of duo. Move further back. There was quite a lot of good racing in this one. It was a much cleaner race than the first one. There was a little bit of lag as well, as there kind of always is with these sort of things. But there was a lot more racing going on in this one and less kind of crashing. This was an unusual matchup. I wasn't expecting to see a Renault 5 Turbo against a Datsun 510. The first corner, this kind of place here, there's not quite the first corner, it's sort of like the second and third corner around here. It is an overtaking spot, kind of. It's a very tricky corner, that one. Datsun couldn't quite make the move stick at that particular turn. It's a very tricky corner, that one, when you kind of come off that section. We had it's kind of a duel here between two rally legends. We have a Fiat 131 of Bath. I think I remember that name. I should have checked before I started talking. There's the Fiat to Bathy thing. I like that car. It's a really nice car to drive. And up against the slightly laggier Lancia Stratos. There are a couple of Stratoses in this race. I'm actually surprised there weren't more of them. So I was expecting them to be pretty competitive. As they come out of the final corner, though, the Stratos seems to have the sort of the grip through the corners. I was amazed by the straight line speed of this Bath. It's very quick. I was thinking the Stratos were going to kind of walk away with it down this sort of front straight, but the Abarth was having none of it. As they come into the first corner, it's a very brave man who tries to go all the way around the outside. However, the Abarth manages to do it. So well done to you. That's really tricky going around the outside of that corner, because you literally have a tiny tap on the brake before you get turned in there. So that's a very good overtaking manoeuvre, especially considering that Stratos there is lagging all over the place. Which, well, it wasn't quite as bad as the first race, but yeah, it doesn't help in the car you're trying to overtake. You're never quite sure where it is. However, the Stratos does have a lot more grip through the corners. As you can see, it's caught right back up to the back of the Abarth. Yeah, the Stratos is a good car. It just didn't seem to have sort of the straight line speed of the Ferrari, which is probably what's kind of kept it down towards the middle of the field. Now, what have we got going on? The Datsun had found its way past the Renault. Just about. It was a very close battle between these two cars, actually. Again, I'm amazed the Datsun was still going around here. Again, the curbs are nasty. I was expecting a lot more cars to end up on their roof. When we were doing testing for my California, I rolled it about 2 or 3 points on this track. So I was expecting to find a lot of cars on their roof, the Datsun being one of them, because it is a rather tall car and not particularly wide. The Renault, again, was a car I was expecting to struggle, but they weren't having the same problem with rolling the curbs as I would. However, the Renault eventually ran a little bit too wide, was pushing a little bit too hard, and had a little bit of a spin in the background at the front, and it was the duel between the two 250 Californias. There's me trying to go all the way around the outside at the final corner. That's not a particularly good place to kind of overtake. Now, you can see there's quite a big difference in how I built my car to this guy's car. He had a lot more straight line speed than me. As you can see, coming out, I had a better run out the final corner, and still the silver California is going to get the inside line through there. Whereas I had a lot more grip, which makes for an interesting sort of race. And I wasn't that much slower than him in a straight line. It was just enough to be a pain. It made it very hard to overtake, because as soon as you got on a straight, he would kind of start pulling away. It means I have to be extra brave on the brakes. Through the corners, though, my car is pretty good. I mean, both these Californias are good through the corners. You can see the Elan is further up the road, but it's not sort of massively gone in the distance. If we hadn't been kind of squabbling, I think it would have been a lot closer race, because we kind of ended up in a large battle for the last 3 or 4 laps. I then get very brave on the brakes and actually locked up a little bit. May have tagged the back of the guy in front. Amazingly, neither of us had any damage from that. Which is good, no harm was done. There's a manically sliding Testarossa in the background. I'm not sure if that was sliding or lagging. It's very hard to say. Further back, and there is some more racing going on. This time, it is again with the Stratos and the Abarth, a different Stratos now, that was making its way past the Abarth, but ran a little bit wide in the hairpin. And then the Abarth is right back on it. I like the Abarth. I think that Abarth is a fantastic car. I was surprised how well it was doing, actually. I thought it was going to struggle with the lights of the car. And he's now going to go for the dive up the inside. There's a little bit of contact there. That one, that's pretty much a racing incident. You can't really put anyone at fault for that one. A little bit of a shame for the Stratos. The Stratos had started like right near the back. And it's very tough when you start in kind of 60. The grid's on random, I should tell everybody. The grid is on random, so it's a completely random grid. You never know where you're going to start. If you start towards the back, you're always going to struggle to make it up sort of through the order, because you're always going to get caught up and slowed down on the first couple of laps. Amazingly, another sort of race I wasn't expecting to see, as now Datsun is right behind Lancia Stratos. That's not a usual sight on a racetrack, I'm going to be honest. Credit to the guy driving that Datsun, he was doing a pretty damn good job to keep up with all these other cars. At the front, and there was still the battle for second place. This one went on for a good 3 or 4 laps. I think this is the second to last lap now. Back marker is kind of causing a little bit of problems. It's a very tricky place to be catching up to somebody when you're going through that section. Not an easy place to get out of the way. So I kind of snuck a little bit there. Got a little bit lucky with that one. Then I had my own issues, and now I was trying to go defensive, and may have left a little bit too much of a gap before I dived up the inside. Try to go around the outside. Hairpin is a very tricky manoeuvre again. You never really want to try to go around the outside unless your car's got an awful lot more grip. And while I did have a slightly better handling car, it wasn't so much that I could try that sort of manoeuvre. Coming through bridge, my favourite overtaking spot is the corner after bridge. If you get a good run through here, you can dive up the inside. I did have a good run through here. However, the Silver California was doing a very good job of defending. However, when you defend, you're going to run out slightly wide, so I can do the sort of the cutback and just about use the extra grip. There we go. I do know English. It was in there somewhere. The extra grip that my car has. And then we come around the final corner and onto the front straight. Of course, now, as I said, I have got the better handling car, but this guy has got the better straight line speed, and this is where how you build your car is very, very important. If you have the straight line speed, you can generally get track position, because it's a lot easier to overtake a car in the straight line than it is sort of in the bends. So now that I was in the lead, I was having to constantly worry about when we got to a straight bit, because this car is noticeably faster than mine. Not massively faster, but it's certainly noticeable. As we come up towards the Maggott and Beckett complex, yes, it was very close. And again, you really don't want to be particularly close through here. It's very scary sort of following someone through here. So you have to hope that they don't brake a little bit early, otherwise you're going to have a huge crash, because it is pretty fast through there. Unfortunately for me, both of us got bad exits through there. The Silver California was on 2 wheels, I was on the dirt. Yeah, we were pushing these cars pretty hard. This time I go very defensive, make sure that there's no room to kind of sneak up the inside. I'm going to try and make the Silver California go the long way around. And of course, my car's got superior grip, just a little bit, which makes it very, very hard to overtake. And then of course, I've got to make sure to park my car on the apex, make sure he can't manage to do the cutback on me. As we come towards the final sector, or final section of the race, in fact, this is where my car is strongest through this bit here. Because of the sort of the extra downforce, extra grip that I was getting from my car, I could just about hold the other California at bay, but it was a very close race between us at the end. Out front, and the Elan was pretty much unrivaled. He had started alongside me, kind of in the middle of the pack, got a slightly better start, and was pretty much gone at the front. He did a little bit of showboating on the final lap. I reckon if us two Californias hadn't been battling each other so much, it would have been very close between us three. I think the Elan would probably still have it, because that is a very, very quick car. It's a little bit of a celebratory spin across the line. The Elans are very, very tough to beat. They don't have the straight line speed, but they do have an awful lot of grip through the corners. Now, while all of that action had been going on, it was kind of inevitable. Somebody was going to find a curb to roll, and it's not particularly surprising it was Datsun, as it takes a roll through bridge. Yeah, that's a nasty curb there. It's surprisingly easy to roll these cars off that curb. You have to be very careful. And he didn't even hit the curb particularly hard on that as well. He only just clipped it, which is a bit of a surprise. Now, he did get very lucky and got away without any real damage. It done aero damage, which is enough to slow you down in a straight line, but it hadn't damaged the engine, which is incredible. I don't think I've ever rolled a car and not killed the engine in doing so. But there we go. We move on to race 3. This is at Tsukuba. I started kind of mid-pack. TJ had actually managed to make an appearance for this one. The first corner, everything went wrong. There was a massive crash, of which no camera angle really shows very well. Basically, there is a very, very laggy Alpha and a rather laggy Mazda MX-5 somewhere in there. I can't see it at the moment. and destroy. I just love that. There's a Triumph just going for a spin down the road. I don't know quite what happened because it just doesn't show it very well. Everything has a big crash. My car had suffered a lot of damage to the brakes, I realised, as I ploughed into the back of the Golf. I do apologise, I went to put the brakes on and just nothing happened. At that point there, I then killed my engine as well. I hadn't had a very good start to this race. There are loads of broken cars in this one as well, just because of this lagging Alpha. At the front, and about 4 cars I think have got away with without being involved in that. This Fiat again, there is an Alpha GTA behind him, and there is a silver Elise somewhere around. I think a Mark II Escort got away with it as well. The Abarth runs a little bit over the curb. Someone's being an idiot and driving the wrong way, trying to get to the pits. We'll come to that later. Yeah, the curb out there is surprisingly nasty. You have to be careful with some of these very light cars. You can hit the curb and it will affect the handling in that case. That was a rather dramatic effect on the, the handling of the Fit. Yeah, basically there's the cars bounce over the curb and it can sort of catch these lightweight cars out. And of course some of these are very lightweight. Further back through the pack, there was all sorts of interesting cars in this one. Again, there wasn't very many Lotuses, which really surprised me. I mean, we've got here, what we've got? We've got an Escort Mark II, McLaren Mercedes ESLR thing, I've forgotten the name of it completely, and that's TJ in the Lotus Cortina. Now, I'm going to point out right now that I have no clue what levels of damage cars have on them in this race. Yes, it is showing some as smoking, but at different points in the replays it shows different cars smoking in different places, different levels of damage. It's terribly laggy and I don't really know what's going on. So this Mercedes looks like it's got a broken engine, but I don't think it does because it still goes rather fast. Later on, and the lead had swapped hands. I didn't really see what happened, but this Alpha was really rather quick. However, everything went wrong for him as he came around the final corner. Sorry, I do know what happened. The Abarth had a spin. Never mind, ignore me. Yeah, the Alpha had pulled out a massive lead, but on the final corner, there's the other Alpha was being rather laggy and pretty much destroyed this guy's race, who had to jump into the pit and get his car fixed. And there you see the Elise and the Abarth go past. Everything was to go wrong for what was our leader Alpha, as he got spat out of the pit lane right into the middle of a rather large battle. I think he got spun around in there because he kind of vanishes. And then there's the laggy Alphas in this thing as well. TJ was doing relatively well. It kind of survived and was in about 6th at the moment. This was really a survive the laggy incidences. It was terribly bad, and I don't know why in particular. I guess one guy's connection was a bit dodgy. You will have noticed in the kind of the background there is a crashing sound and an Escort off the road, so you think we know what's going to have happened here. And sure enough, it's this curb again, and an Escort's managed to take a roll off that. The downside of running too low, too stiff a suspension on rather tall, narrow cars. Again, I was surprised more cars weren't rolling. I mean, that's only 2 cars that have had rolls off curbs. I was expecting a lot more. People are finally listening to my warnings of avoid the curbs. Where are we now? I think this is sort of towards this kind of halfway stage. The Abarth had managed to make its way past the Elise, and I didn't quite see what happened. Back markers were a bit of a problem in this. There was a surprising number of cars that hadn't gone into the pits, although there's a possibility that it's just the replays weren't telling me that the cars were fixed. I am surprised not more people dive into the pits when their car's broken. I mean, sure, you're going to lose time getting your car fixed, but the amount of time you lose, especially with some of the damage on these cars, they were suffering quite a lot. I know some of them didn't pit. I don't know why you wouldn't just dive into the pit and get your engine fixed, get your steering fixed, especially get your brakes fixed, in my case. Yeah, I find it a bit weird why you would keep going, because you will gain far more time from having a fixed car than you will lose in the actual stop. What was the leader's Alpha was making his way back through the field. That thing is incredibly quick. If it hadn't been for all the incidences, I wonder how far ahead that would have been. This time picking off the Mercedes, whose now engine has miraculously stopped smoking. Yes, well done, replay. This Mercedes was very, very quick in a straight line, possibly even faster than my California. It was a very, very quick car, but it doesn't have the handling. As you can see, it's looking a little bit difficult. Sliding through there, a little bit of rallycross. It didn't look like an easy car to drive. You got the cameraman. Oh, just about got away with that one. There were a few cars had a few offs on that final corner. You can run very wide through there, but you have got to be careful because there is a wall there, and the wall kind of narrows in, so it's very easy to have a big crash through that section. You can just about see me in the background starting to make up ground. Now the lag was still playing a part as we get towards the end of the race. This time the Alpha is lagging about and ends up hitting, well, kind of lags backwards into the Golf. The Golf wasn't having the best of days. Amazingly, it hadn't suffered too much damage until that, and that damaged the engine. It's now smoking, possibly. I don't know. Replays were terrible at telling me what was going on. But the Golf was slowing down towards the end, I'm presuming, from all the damage. This is what happens when two laggy cars hit each other. No one's really sure quite what's going on. Oh god, it was absolutely terrible. I'm not sure. TJ had a spin. I think he had a spin on his own accord, but I'm not really sure what happened there. There's me trying to make my way through the field with my now fixed Ferrari. I don't know what goes on here. This is a really bizarre one. They go around the corner, they go back, and then they don't know what happened. Nobody really knows what's going on. I got amazingly lucky that nothing hit me. Unfortunately, the Mercedes didn't get so lucky, and they got getting punted into the wall. Yeah, it was it was terribly tricky to judge what was going on. TJ, kind of recovering from his spin, was trying to make his way back up through the field. He was now battling with what was a fairly broken Escort. Yeah, the Cortina was doing okay. I mean, it was very hard to judge what car was quick here, because it was just a case of get lucky when you go past a laggy car, and that was really the most important thing. At the front, though, it had been I wouldn't say a straightforward, but it was a fairly convincing win for the Fiat Abarth. Yeah, it was very eventful for everybody involved in this one. There was so much going on. It was very tricky to kind of pick highlights of this because so much was happening. And he finishes in reverse for a little bit of style, and an MX-5 gets caught up in it. I don't know, it didn't look like a touch, but it's very hard to say what was going on. The Elise ended up coming in second. The battle for third was pretty close. The Alpha was still trying to make his way through the field from his rather nasty last corner incident. And there was a damaged Golf that was slowly dropping back, and fairly easy pickings. The Alpha looked immensely fast. It is a shame that there was all the crashes in this race. And I was making my way through the field as well with my repaired car. I was trying to catch up to TJ. I had managed to screw up the end of race timer, so it was only 30 seconds instead of a minute and a half. TJ got kind of crowded out by a backmarker. I'm not sure if the backmarker didn't realise he was on that side of him. And then that's the end of the replay. So I amazingly ended up in 5th, I think, which is not bad considering I was in all that first lap chaos. So yes, there we go. That was FailRace versus the community in lightweight cars. It was pretty good fun. It was a shame about the lag. The lag caused a lot of problems. I hope next week it will be better, but I can't really promise anything. It was a real shame because there was a lot of good racing in that, but a lot of it was ruined by some laggy cars. Now, next week's English will appear in a minute. There we go. My brain has recovered itself. Next week's FailRace versus the community is going to be cycled production, which means that I am going to pick 3 cars, and we're all going to race absolutely identical cars around the track. I will put on the forums what cars they are, so you know, so you can put paint jobs on them if you wish. If you wish to take part, as ever, go to the forums. There will be a section called FailRace versus the community. You sign up in there and then sign up to the forums as well. I advise you to, because when we need sort of people to do events, we're going to be posting on the forums. There is a section on there called FailRace official events. When we are needing multiple people for a particular challenge or particular filming thing, that is where we will be posting. That is where you can find out what's going on and get involved with some of our videos. Next week's race will be on Thursday. Well, the filming for the race will be on Thursday, the 1st of August, starting at 7 PM English time. I think it's British Standard Time at the moment. So you're going to have to figure out what that is in your own countries. There is a possibility that we might have too many. We had loads of entries for this one. We just about got everybody in, I think, who wanted to take part. However, there are possibilities that there might be too many people to fit you all in. And I apologise if there is, because we can't do film more than 3 races. We could do a 4th race, but it won't be filmed because the video is already long enough as it is. So yes, I apologise if we can't get you in, or I apologise if you can't get in because of connection issues or whatever. It is out of my hands really with that stuff. I have fairly decent internet, but you know what Forza can be like. On a final note, I'm going to end talking about a recovery vehicle. Now, a lot of people have said that we should have a recovery vehicle. I have some issues with this. The first issue is that it takes up another spot in the lobby, which means less people can race. It also means that somebody has to be online for all of the races, and somebody has to be on there for every week. It's hard enough getting Daniel and TJ to turn up to these, let alone another person. So that's one of the issues. Another one of the bigger issues for me personally is part of the reason as well why I run simulation damage. You would think, well, why not just stick it on cosmetic so that people can roll themselves over and nobody ends up broken? Well, you can do that, but then there's no sense of sort of, what's the word for it? My brain is now struggling to think. There's no sense of fear when you try to overtake somebody. You can just push them off the road. It doesn't matter because it's not going to do any damage to your car. And if we have a recovery vehicle, if you end up crashing, if you end up rolling, oh well, somebody's going to come rescue you. By having it on simulation, by having it, if you end up on your roof, you are out. It should, in theory, add that extra bit of caution into the driving, which it hasn't really. But yeah, it should. Admittedly, when there's a lag thing, then that's a different story because you can't do much about it. On the most part, though, if you end up on your roof, it's your own fault because you've hit a curb too hard and your car's not set up properly. The final, and this is the bigger problem, and this is the reason why I'm not going to do it for now, is that having a recovery vehicle, as you saw in that Camino race, is very dangerous. Admittedly, Camino is probably a bad example because you are right at the walls all the time, but if a car ends up on its roof and then you try and recover that car, the recovery vehicle is going to have to be on the track at some point. You're going to have to be going round. It's going to be getting in the way, especially if the car is rolled on the racing line or, in fact, just off the racing line and they've got to try and push it back over. That car can then end up in the middle of the road and cause a bigger crash. Also, on the theme with lag, if you have a car trying to roll another car over and the lobby's laggy as it is, that's going to cause problems as the leaders come past. And yeah, you have the issue of once we do get the cars fixed, once they get cars on the wheels, then they're going to try and get back to the pits, and we're going to have another situation where we have a massive car park in the middle of the road, which isn't good for the people who haven't had a crash, for the people who are actually racing properly. That's the bigger issue I have with having a recovery vehicle, is we're going to end up with a lot of broken cars, or possibly, I don't want broken cars, I want everybody to be racing cleanly. Admittedly, you know, there's going to be a bit of rubbing, but I don't want to see the huge crashes. The problem with the recovery vehicle is if we get cars back onto their wheels, what are we going to do with them? If they're just going to sit there, well, they might as well sit there on their roof. If they're going to try and get back to the pits, if there's a lot of them, if there's more than one of them, or if the recovery vehicle's got to push them back, then there's going to be traffic on the road that could interfere with people's proper racing. So that is my opinion on a recovery vehicle. Maybe we will include it at some point if we can find a way of doing it without causing issues for everybody else who is racing properly. Hopefully we can kind of get the lags sorted, but I don't think there's very much we can do. Unfortunately, it's something we're just going to have to kind of hope that it works on the evening. Some races are better than others. It's a very hard one. However, that is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching. So yeah, until next time, goodbye.